Welcome, my name's Nat, and we are doing a deep dive on how not to talk to a person with dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is a neurodevelopmental condition which can affect coordination, movement, concentration, fatigue. Essentially, it has a lot going with it. However, the damn public, so ignorant. So they are always saying the wrong thing. I'll be honest with you, the people who are probably saying the wrong things are probably not here today. But I imagine that those of you who are dyspraxic probably just want a nice place to rant and get it out in the open. Those of you who aren't probably have some sort of connection in your life, and maybe you want to be a better person and help your loved ones. Dyspraxia has a long history of being a kind of a naughty kid syndrome, or just someone who is very clumsy, and there is a lot more to it. You will find, though, most people are actually really friendly. They just are a little bit ill-informed, and hopefully we can steer them in the right direction. So today we are looking at dyspraxia. Forget about the others. Today we are purely focusing on this one. Here's me, your tried and tested narrator. How not to talk to a person with dyspraxia. There are different ways of talking about it, hence changing the name. I would say it depends on the context. Some people might prefer dyspraxic. I will say, though, saying, oh, I'm dyslexic sounds nicer than saying I'm dyspraxic. There's something about the way the word sounds, which sounds a little bit more aggressive. But, that's personally. In a nutshell, dyspraxia is a combination of difficulties or delays in motor coordination. This doesn't mean you have a big jetpack. You've got gross motor, fine motor. Essentially, it's moving around. Also, sensory processing. This is when the brain gets overloaded with too much information and it might slow down, a little bit like a computer. And organising and planning. If you have challenges in all these areas, it's possible you may have dyspraxia. Lawrence just says, when my son got diagnosed, they said it's no longer called dyspraxia, but developmental coordination disorder. You are absolutely right, Lauren. The reason we say dyspraxia is it's just what more people know it by, quite honestly. It's as simple as that. More people are familiar with the term. The reason dyspraxia isn't used is it's actually much broader. For instance, you could have non-developmental dyspraxia, acquired dyspraxia, which is quite different to developmental. One is born with you, one can develop. We are actually talking about developmental dyspraxia today, opposed to any other form. But yeah, it is a mouthful. Thanks for calling that out. Some quick terms to make sure we are all on the right page is neurodivergence just means how the brain functions, and typically functions different from the perceived normal. Body awareness is difficulty in sensing internal cues. Internal cues could be, I can feel my heart pumping, or I'm cold, or I'm really hungry right now. Those are all internal signals that you might struggle with. I really struggle with knowing when I'm hungry. Some people say, oh, I would love that. Honestly, no, I get really skinny all the time and I have to keep bulking up. Or I go outside, I'm not cold at all, yet I'm still going to catch a cold. Body awareness is a real thing. Developmental condition simply means lifelong. Yes, with your entire life. There's no way of getting rid of dyspraxia. We don't want it. Dyspraxia doesn't have to be negative. It's more of a societal thing. Motor difficulties. This is things like balance, coordination, different perceptions. Not quite depth perception, because that's more about eyes, but they do interlink. This little illustration here, I've done unofficial subtypes of dyspraxia. These are unofficial, as it states. The reason why I think they're useful, though, is when we say dyspraxia or DCD, it's very broad. I don't know how to help you. However, your dyspraxia might predominantly affect your motor coordination. It might be more ideomotor, more like hand coordination. It could be more organising and switching things around. It could be predominantly oral, so you get stuck on the tip of your tongue. It could be more emotional connections, tracking, or replacing. It can affect you in many different ways. While these terms are not official, I do find them quite useful if you're talking to someone who understands these terms to have a better understanding on how to help you. Fee just says, diagnosed with the 3Ds, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and dyscalculia, as well as ADHD to top it off. It's like the cherry on the top. My first one is just try harder. What I want you to do, if you are like, you know what, I've heard this one before, use some little emojis, like little thumb up, or show me some love. I appreciate not everyone here is going to have dyspraxia. So if you know that someone you love or someone you work with have probably heard this, go with it. Or if you have another neurodivergence, I find a lot of these get similar grief, to be honest. Just try harder. Why is this not the best way to talk to someone with dyspraxia? On the surface, sounds motivational. Just try harder. You got this, bro. It's not motivational, and the reason is dyspraxia is not due to effort. It's neurological. You could be trying so hard and not getting anywhere, and you feel demotivated because people are thinking you're lazy. You're not lazy, it's neurological. Dyspraxia, some of the key challenges is coordination. Doesn't matter how hard you try, you're still going to have coordination challenges. Of course, you can improve, and practice does make perfect, but inherently it's still going to be there. Speech is one that, yes, you can have speech therapy, but the underlying difficulties will still be there. The same with motor skills, processing, interaction, spatial awareness. This just really hits home on the developmental side, that I am not saying it doesn't get better, but I'm saying if it gets better, it's typically due to coping mechanisms, which could be considered a form of masking, which can tire someone out and lead to burnout eventually if not managed correctly. What's spatial awareness again? That is essentially thinking in 3D space. How far away is something? For instance, I'm about to get the handle. What? Oh, I missed it. It's not always being able to gauge what's around you. Essentially seeing in 3D. People think it might be due to eyesight, but obviously eyesight is just a tool to perceive information. It's our brain that puts it all together. Yeah, those mystery bruises, Mr. Bump, favourite Mr. Man, Mr. Men. My first question though is, what were you told to try harder at? Has there been any instances in your life where, due to no fault of your own, there were things you find challenging, yet people still wanted to push you? Essentially, has anyone told you, the fish, to climb a tree, and you're like, this fish ain't climbing a tree? Attention. Yeah, focus. Sports. Honestly, the amount of times I bunked off PE, honestly, I never went until they started making us wearing skanky PE kit. I don't know if schools still do that, but we had this big old tub of smelly old PE clothes that if you did not bring your stuff, you had to wear. I had to resort to plan B. Oh my god, I feel sick. The girls had a much easier an excuse. Not me though, I had to think of alternative routes. Handwriting? Yep. I cannot get better at handwriting. You can try, but the two hemispheres just are not connecting. Use of words, yep, knowing the words, but not always being able to say the words and having to think of an alternative. I do this really interesting thing, I don't know what it's called, but I think of a word, normally quite a big word, because I know some big words, but then those words get... I then have to say a simpler word, but then as I say the simpler word, the bigger word comes out at the same time, and I make this kind of mishmash, kind of Dr. Zeus word. Pedro says ballet, knitting, sewing. Yeah, no word of a lie, I did tap dancing for 7 years, and after 7 years, I was probably worse than when I started. You can lead a horse to a tap dancing show, but you can't make him tap. I was genuinely terrible. Okay, eye contact, concentration, focus, pronunciation, calm down, talk louder. Yep, voice control is a typical one. Defo handwriting, naming words, I can only see the first letter in my head. Yep, I'd say that kind of relates to 3D space, that kind of being able to imagine. Crochet, let's be honest, who can do crochet? It's really challenging. Control, answering a question straight away. Is that dyspraxia though? Absolutely, that is absolutely dyspraxia. Times tables. You know what, you might think timetables may be dyscalculia. They blur the line. While the result might be challenging, I would say if it is just around maths, maybe dyscalculia. If it just happens to be timetables, but it could be other areas of retrieving information, then maybe dyspraxia. Okay, these are all really interesting, by the way. LaDonna says, I just say the word words. Yeah, I know a few people that do that. Yeah, I'm just going to the words as a place filler. Fee says, terrible at team or coordinated games or sports. Yeah, I was so bad at rounders. No word of a lie, I broke one person's nose through rounders. For you Americans, that's kind of like a fun version of cricket or baseball. I also knocked someone's ear off. Their ear didn't fall off, but definitely took a chip out of it. And it was on someone's wedding day as well. Not intentionally, just really bad. Because what happens is when I go to hit the ball, I let go of the bat rather than hitting the ball. Didn't make me that popular, to be honest. All right, let's look at the next one. Everyone's a bit clumsy sometimes. When you say I got dyspraxia and people ask what that is, it's like undermining you. No big deal. Everyone's a little bit clumsy. It's really undermining and diminishes the challenging. It's a little bit like, say you have depression and someone says, it's okay, mate. We're all a little bit depressed sometimes. Depression and being depressed are different. One is a natural emotion that everyone feels. One is something which is debilitating, which happens for a prolonged period of time, sometimes no good reason. It's not something that happens here and there. Maybe we just got off a roller coaster, we're a little bit disorientated, a bit clumsy, maybe we're feeling a bit sick. This is something which is always there and can impact the life into a kind of a severe way sometimes. With that, I want to know, when you tell people, hey, I'm dyspraxic, or equivalent if you know someone who has dyspraxia, have you experienced these or not experienced these? So the first one is, what's dyspraxia? You mean dyslexia? Do people often get dyslexia and dyspraxia confused? I know for me, they definitely do. Then we've got everyone's a bit clumsy sometimes. Have people tried to tell you it's not that big of a deal? Oh, sorry. If you tell someone you're dyspraxic, they're like, oh, bless, I'm really sorry. You're like, I really don't need this pity party right now. Or, thanks for telling me. Please tell me more. Which obviously may be the best one of the bunch. April says, because I don't have official dyspraxia diagnosis, I can't answer. And that's completely fine. If you're not able to answer, you don't have to on all of them. It might just be ones you've actually heard, to be fair, or you've not heard other people say. First of all, what's dyspraxia? You mean dyslexia? More people than not have heard that. Everyone's a bit clumsy? Yeah, most people have. Oh, sorry. Not many of you have had pity, which is great. I've definitely had that one a few times. Thanks, can you tell me more? That one we would have liked to have seen a little bit more experience, but sadly, that's the reality. Oh, Fee says, ableist language. Everyone's a bit, just be careful, just do this, isn't just a personality trait. It's really oversimplifying it. It's saying, I can do it. It's like a bird saying, why don't you just fly away? Bird, I can't fly. It's easy for one thing, but not easy for you. Yeah, April, you're absolutely right. People often confuse all the disses together. You're so good at ... You don't seem dyspraxic. This happened all the time. For instance, I love riding a bike. People say, you're really good at riding a bike. You don't seem dyspraxic to me. Or let's say someone throws a ball at me and I catch it. You simply can't be dyspraxic. This once again is undermining. It's assuming that just because you know the headline of a condition doesn't mean you know all the nuances. Yes, it is lifelong, but as it fluctuates throughout your life, there are going to be some times when you have more abilities to do certain tasks and other things less ability. Some of the strengths that typically go along with dyspraxia is perseverance. This is because life's going to be challenging. If you can get through that challenge, you will grow resilience and perseverance. Empathy, you normally find it easier to connect with other people because it's easier for you to connect a similar life experience. Unique perspective, naturally part of the ND world. Resilience, creativity, attention to detail, adaptability, and visual spatial skills. In some ways, that might sound a little bit contradiction because three-dimensional space and thinking is one of the difficulties. But as we said, none of us fit neatly into boxes. For some people, because they struggle in one area, they find an alternative approach to it. Actually, it can be a strength. Oh, Nike said, yes, the bike part is so real. People think having the ability is one thing, negates all the other symptoms, and they tend to have less empathy when you start struggling more, because in their minds, you did it before, why can't you do it now? So true. As we go on today, we are going to be looking at some great examples of amazing people in the sports world who has dyspraxia. This is the thing I always tell people. Just because you have something which makes something harder doesn't mean that you necessarily want to avoid it. It's okay, I have dyslexia, so of course you don't want to play Scrabble. I personally hate Scrabble, but some people may really want to play Scrabble. Just because you have dyspraxia doesn't mean, guys, let's cancel the bike trip. It doesn't work like that. So it's always worth asking someone, even if you think you know the headline. Oh, LaDonna says, get this for autism. What is augmented and alternative communication? Good question, Anne-Marie. This is finding alternative ways to speak. It could be sign language, it could be Makaton, it could be using post signs, any other way of negating the world. Yeah, Scrabble sucks. I'm sorry, guys, but any word over 4 letters, not happening. Have you been told to aim lower due to your dyspraxia? Again, if you don't have dyspraxia, use the equivalents to you, because I think they're quite similar in terms of the type of reactions we get. Maybe they've not exactly said the word aim lower, but for instance, if you struggle with something, say, rather than keep trying, do something easier. For example, I want to use rollerblades. Have you tried using roller skates? Or if you, for instance, are trying to use a bigger vocabulary and people say, why don't you just stick with the easier words for now? Rather than finding strategies to support you, people are trying to lower the bar. While that could be done with the best intentions, actually you can see how this could develop to more negative repercussions later down the line. You don't seem dyspraxic. This is the classic one. And I'm always sorry if your name's Karen, this ain't personal. But when people look at you, they don't look autistic, do you? Or, oh, I didn't know you were dyspraxic. It's not a physical trait. There's no certain look or style. Everyone has their own style. These individuals are all dyspraxic. Cara Delevingne, the English model and actress, Daniel Radcliffe, the OG Harry Potter, and Richard Branson, the guy who founded and bought out over 500 companies. Dyspraxia absolutely does not have a look. It is hereditary, like things like blue eyes and brown hair, but it's not something that you can see. It's absolutely under the surface. LaDonna says, I always ask them, what does look like? Most of the time their response is, what are you expecting it to look like? I don't know. Like Hunchback of Notre Dame? I don't know what people are expecting, but I think people just assume that they would be able to guess. Or they see people who have publicly stated I have dyspraxia. Because they also have other co-occurring conditions, they collate the two together. Let's take autism, for example, because that's an easier explanation. A lot of people who might have, say, Down syndrome may also have autism. Doesn't go the other way around, may I say. People might have this look like, oh, that's what autism looks like, because, say, Down syndrome has a very distinct look, and we join the two together. It's not in a bad way, there is a distinct look. With dyspraxia and autism, it can happen completely solo, and there is no way of knowing. It's all about actions and how we respond to the world around us. There's definitely a look on the isms. Okay, Emma, what does that look like? I will state your point. I can tell if someone has autism, not because of any physical features, but more about the expressions, or somewhat the lack of expressions, how the eyes move around. I would say, though, with dyspraxia, I personally haven't seen anything. But again, prove me wrong. Oh, LaDonna says, though, I don't think there is a look, but I defo have a radar. Maybe there is, but I think it's what you'd call a micro-expressions, something that you have to really be attuned to. It's also something that not everyone see. Clothing, there is something called autistic culture. I think we're getting into the weeds, okay? If we're talking biologically, there is no difference. However, there is learnt differences. Is there a connection between motion sickness and dyspraxia? Do you know what, Petra? That's a really good question. Honestly, I don't know. All I can say is, I have severe motion sickness and dyspraxia. Correlation, yes. Causation, I don't know. Oh, Fee says we tribe up. We can usually identify our people through behaviour traits. You could also say a similar thing. Like if you see people from, I don't know, different classes, different backgrounds, different genders, we all have a different walk and a sway and a bot. So yes, maybe. All right, maybe you've proved me wrong on this, but the point was more looking at their faces. You wouldn't know. This is more of a challenging one because you have to think inwardly and think, what have I succeeded at because of my dyspraxia, not despite it? I want you to think about any neurodivergence on this one. Is there anything that you think, because of this, I am better at? It could be more soft skills. I do think I am more empathetic, not despite my dyspraxia, but because of it. I appreciate this is a tough one to answer, but have a think. Avoiding things I don't want to do. Not really the motivational thing I was looking for, but yeah, creative. Yeah, I do find we're better problem solvers. More intuitive. I like that. Creativity, imagination. My son's teacher always comments on his creative writing when they can read it. Yeah, I like that. We do have to be more creative. If you get over the fact that you're subconscious about how your writing is or the spelling, I think it unlocks a limitless potential. It's when we are constrained by the kind of rules of being exact is when it really hinders creativity. Relatable, organized, nice. Because I have dyspraxia and autism, it's really interesting. I am both very organized and crazily disorganized at the same time. So I like to organize everything, but then a day later, it's all a mess again. Love organizing, terrible at sticking to it. Non-verbal communication, yeah. I'm more understanding. I like this thinking strategically outside of the box, finding alternative ways. I'm able to sense weird vibes. That's a useful one, but I get what you mean. Alternative problem solving. I am more empathetic and have an affinity for animals. Oh, that's nice. Think outside the box. I do think, though, because our verbal communication can take a bit of a hit, we are probably more likely to have a bond with animals because they don't communicate in a human way. Amazing memory. Honestly, you're in the minority there with dyspraxia, but that's great that you have that. Is that why I'm obsessed with cats? Do you know what, LaDonna? It might be due to autism, or it might be because cats are cute. It could be for a number of reasons. Cats are great. Organised chaos? Absolutely. You'll grow out of it. Has anyone told you that some of your traits, which may be related to a neurodivergence, are something that you'll grow out of? This is just typical kid problems. Do children have higher visible traits than adults? Absolutely. But do adults have less traits? No. It's more about how we mask and how our difficulties change over time. To really hit home, these are neurodevelopmental difficulties or differences. These are things that are with you your whole life, but they can evolve and merge and be masked up over time. For instance, when you're just a little tight, you might have delayed movement. You might struggle and you might walk a little bit later. Of course, when you're an adult, you're going to be probably walking just fine, even though you might have a certain swagger. Going back to you don't look dyspraxic, I will say actually, there is a dyspraxic walk. I have seen it. It is a thing. I just don't want you judging people whether or not they have that. Then we've got difficulty dressing and playing, doing buttons up. On one hand, you've got the fact that you are learning to do something for the first time. And then you've got dyspraxia. At a young age, it's very difficult to know what is what because people naturally find things difficult for the first time. But typically, it's about delay in early years. Is there a delay in comparison to your neurotypical peers? Then, as we get older, things like cutting and handwriting, and you think the only reason that progresses is because you typically, hopefully, aren't using scissors as a toddler. But a lot of these things, the difficulties arrive as you naturally start using or doing these things in whatever stage of life you're in. School, as we move on to adults, organising, daily life. So you do not grow out of dyspraxia, but the challenges do evolve with your day-to-day life. LaDonna says, I tell people all the time that neurodivergent kids turn into neurodivergent adults. It's almost as if people think the struggles end at legal adulthood and have less empathy for adults with those neurotypical differences. The judgment is even worse when you start unmasking. Very true. We don't just disappear into the abyss. Oliver says, I'm curious about the walk because I think I may have it. Do you know what, Oliver? I don't want to be going too stereotypical, but this is just from my observation. There's a bop. It doesn't quite match up. For instance, with autism, there is a difference in the eye contact. On dyspraxia, there is a difference in the walk. It's subtle, it's nuanced. I do not want any of you using this to go off and diagnose people. It's not an accurate way of doing it. Forget what I said. even though there's a thing. Okay, Mikey says ties and shoelaces. Still can't do ties. Shoelaces took me years to learn. I was in late secondary school when I finally learned to do my shoelaces. I loved Velcro. While this isn't to do with dyspraxia, I did also love the shoes that as you walk, they would light up. Honestly, yeah, they were great. But normally they came with Velcro. It ended up with both. Fee says, I accidentally ended up with 4 dogs after signing up to be a foster. They kept staying. We tend to have high empathy and resonate with animals because of our pattern recognition skills, and we also communicate and understand at a deeper level than just verbal. Yes, that's one of the best responses I've seen to the benefits of being neurodivergent. We're practicing shoelaces at the moment. Very tricky. They are. The best way I learn is a rabbit comes out of the hole, gets chased around a tree by a fox, and it goes back into a hole. It's about creating a narrative or a story, just changing the way you would teach someone, or using 2 little bunny ears and tying the bunny ears together. That's how I learnt anyway, kind of making it fun or a narrative. Moving on to more discrimination, we've got, are you sure you're dyspraxic? You seem fine. This is when people are questioning your diagnosis. Do any of you do any of these sports? Football, rugby, running, martial arts, swimming, athletics. All of these sports, there are very known dyspraxic individuals who are absolutely thriving. If any of them publicly said they had dyspraxia, people would be like, no, not a chance. Because these aren't people who are just good at what they do, they are world leading. Being good at something doesn't automatically eliminate you from this diagnosis. Dyspraxia can exist in many different forms. For instance, yes, maybe doing rugby would be more inherently challenging, but if you've got the right mindset, not that I should try harder, but you find different strategies, and sometimes those strategies make you hard to read by the opposition and actually can work in your advantage. Is this presentation supposed to be rage bait? A little bit. Sorry. Unfortunately, these are all things that we deal with, and I think by talking openly about them, it can help people realize that we are not alone. And this isn't an us problem, this is a societal problem. This little diagram here, which I made the other day, is a really simple way to work out how doctors diagnose individuals. Nice and simple, and I want us to think, does any of these automatically eliminate us? First of all, motor coordination, challenges with coordination, balance or movement in daily activities. All of these athletes doesn't mean that they don't have challenges, it just means that they do it regardless of the challenges. They're going to say, clearly not a sporty bunch today, but that's fine. Then we got since childhood. Have these difficulties always been present? For all we know, any of these athletes could easily have challenges early on. It's something that we're not aware of. Skill development. Motor skills develop differently from others. For instance, some of them, while might be amazing at football, might have learnt to walk a few years later than their peers. Or maybe they might have had their own dyspraxic bot. That is something which, when you compare it to others, it doesn't quite line up. Then lastly, no other explanation. You have to rule out things like cerebral palsy, vision issues, all the other things that have a lot of overlap. If it's like tick, 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 then dyspraxia. Just remember that if you look at how we diagnose dyspraxia, it doesn't rule out the fact that you can be successful in other areas. Oh, don't worry, Anna Marie, those shoelaces of mine, I swear, on a day, I probably have to retie my shoelaces 20 times. They are always undoing. And I mean, I'm double knot, I'm triple knotting, they still undo. But the worst thing is, they undo, but they still remain knotted. I've got a shoelace that is knotted, and yet it's still not holding my shoe in place. Here are just some athletes which I think are great role models because they have not avoided sports because of their dyspraxia, but they have made it work for them. We've got Stephen, who is football. In rugby, we've got Ellis. Bear in mind, I don't actually know any of these people because I'm not into sports, but hopefully some of them you are aware of. We've got James Pratt for running. We've got Kyle in martial arts, and Callum for swimming, and Sabrina for shot put. You can absolutely succeed in sports with dyspraxia. You can absolutely drive a car with dyspraxia. Doesn't mean you always should. None of these things should be a limiting factor. but they are things that you need to take in consideration when you are developing, and know that you might have to put in alternative work in order to get to where you want to get to. Hurry up. Do you ever have people hurrying you along? Maybe because it takes you a little bit longer to get those words out. Maybe because you haven't quite got as fast as you want to. We know that dyspraxia doesn't relate to higher or lower intelligence necessarily at all. But we do know it does hinder cognitive flexibility, how easy it is for the brain to adapt and to move from one task to another task. Here, maybe you are thinking freely. Some people with dyspraxia may struggle to jump thoughts. Then, if you are, for instance, moving things on to coming up with new ideas, turning these imagined thoughts into a tangible idea, that transition, there might be some friction, and same with controlled an idea. So it's not that any one of these is impossible for those with dyspraxia, but it's moving one of them to the kind of next route, and the next route, and the next route. Oh, okay, Nike says, people are always rushing me to put my thoughts into words. When people also fill you in, did you mean this? I just let the person think. I know people mean well, but you don't need to keep interrupting them. Nicole says, this is why letter boards are used by some people with dyspraxia to communicate. Speaking is fine, motor, but a letterbox is gross motor. That's interesting. I'll check that out, Nicole. Amanda says, getting out of bed and getting ready. Yeah. Oh God, I do this thing which I call getting stuck. Say I get out in the morning, I'm doing fine. Then there'll be one thing where I just kind of freeze. So maybe it's like I've just gotten dressed and the next step is brushing my teeth. But I'm just like, oh yeah, brushing my teeth. For instance, it's just like, it's connecting the dots. I know how to do every individual task, but it's when those tasks need to flow and join in together where there may be some sort of mental block. Really interesting. Thank you all for sharing these. If you do have any of your other classic things you hear from people, do share and do let us know. To be honest, I'm getting a bit angry via watching this. After this, go for a walk, take a chill, enjoy yourself. This is an interesting one that I think we'll all have very different opinions on. Is it okay to make jokes about dyspraxia? We've done a similar session on this previously around dyslexia, but I do find it's different depending on different conditions and thinking. So it's okay or not okay. Maybe there should be another category. As we were saying, it's okay if it's you, it's not okay if it's someone else. My personal opinion is it all comes down to intent. If the intent and it's due to someone who knows you well, then I've got no issue. If my friends take the mickey out of me, I'm okay with it. But if a complete stranger does it, or someone with mad intent, not okay, bro. Oh, Lynn says, simple things like packing groceries at supermarket is difficult. Yep, because there's a time pressure, isn't there? People are watching and waiting for you, and I can't do it without focusing. I know it's really slow. It depends on the supermarket as well, because some of them, you have to do it right there, right then. I think if you go in Aldi or Lidl's, you can normally pick up your stuff and take it over and do it in your own time. As long as I can carry, I prefer that. Fee says, my brain wants to process all the information and break it down, particularly with new things, thus taking longer. Others seem to be able to concentrate on the thing without any trouble, but this is a gift and a curse, as it means they'll be able to look at the bigger picture and identify issues and solutions, which others may not. I love that way of looking at it because I do think that is a quite accurate way, a gift and a curse. If given enough time to process, our answer might be much more thought-provoking, more novel, have a way that no one's really thought of before. But on the other hand, the world we live in doesn't like giving additional time because time is money. The Nike says the problem for me is that trying to articulate what I see, that they don't. Yeah. Petra says, are my challenges with multitasking a common difficulty with people with dyspraxia? I often hear, you are a woman, you should be an expert in multitasking. It drives me up the wall. Oh God. Okay. Multitasking is a lie. Human beings are terrible at it. Our brains do not multitask. What they do is they switch focus really quick. There is no science to back up women being better at multitasking. All people are terrible at it. When people say, oh, I'm a really good multitasker, you're not. But when we talk about the cognitive flexibility, essentially going from one task to the another, that is what you're good at. You're good at swapping really fast. You're not good at doing it at the same time. For instance, you're not doing idea evaluation and spontaneous cognition at the same time. It's about moving around. Oh, Darren Brown does some interesting stuff on that. I hadn't heard much from him lately, but I'm sure he does, which is good. Oh, who is he? Is he British? Yeah. He's a British magician, is he? He's much more than that. An illusionist. Very smart guy. He's basically a mind reader without being a mind reader. He says there's no such thing as magic. Everything is science and psychological. Mentalist. Yeah, I think mentalist is probably the word. Thanks, Justin. Okay, next, are you sure you have dyspraxia? Which is a similar one to what we said previously. Have you had this? Have you not had this? It's something that happens all the time. We've already talked about how people are diagnosed. It's unless they are a qualified professional, and even then they have to be the one doing the assessment, then no one is qualified to do that. Only essentially in the right circumstances with the right background can someone do that. Everyone's a little bit dyspraxic. This is very similar to saying everyone's a little bit clumsy. Have you heard people throw the diagnostic label around here, there, and everywhere? While this diagram on the left is a little bit simplistic and a bit flawed, to be honest with you, it does show you that it's not true to say everyone is something. There are neurotypical people. There are allistic people, those who are not autistic, but do have quirks or divulge from the norm, maybe not to the point of a diagnostic label. Then you have neurodivergent. Dyspraxia would fit into this box. I will say I like this image because it easily shows you how there are differences and there are overlaps, but I don't like this image because it makes it seem like A to B when it's not a direct comparison. Oh, Kendra says, I still don't understand the fundamental elements of dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is when the brain is getting one thought to the next thought and how fluid it is. With motor coordination, the brain thinks of something and then it has to do something. For instance, wave. This works well if the connections are flowing great. But if there is some sort of delay, then it'll be like, you might do like a bit of an odd wave. And that could happen with any sort of movement. Movement isn't just physical, it can also be mental or even speech. It's more about the connection between your brain and some sort of action. Louise says, I hear a lot. Everyone is on the autism spectrum. It really annoys me. And I feel it takes away from those who have it. Yeah. To say everyone's a little bit dyspraxic or everyone's on the spectrum, it really undermines those who actually are. Remember, everyone can have difficulties with coordination, but not everyone has difficulties every single day that interfere with day-to-day life. Not so much for dyspraxia. Oh, I'm confused by the diagram. From when you indicate dyspraxia would lie, there's no overlap with autism, or did I misunderstand? A neurodivergent would be this whole area here, the whole blue area. As I said, the diagram I don't think is a perfect way of understanding, but when we talk about the spectrum, typically we are talking about needs. You might have high support needs or low support needs. A neurotypical person would have low support needs. Someone with autism typically would have higher support needs, and someone who is neurodivergent typically lower support needs than autism. This is not a perfect diagram because it ridiculously oversimplifies things, but I think it's useful for some points. The explanation you gave is quite similar to that of ADHD, but in the area of action and movement, not in the area of execution. Marie, you're absolutely right. These things are all very similar. I find a lot of the outputs of neurodivergence is similar, but the reasons how we get to that output are quite different. With dyspraxia, it is essentially the coordination from one part to the other. With ADHD, it's normally with the dopamine. It's more about the communication. They're similar, but how we get to that is different. It's just bad coordination. Once again, oversimplifying it. People who have thought about dyspraxia may just see it as clumsiness. There is way more below the surface. With most things in life, it's an iceberg. We only see the tip. There is a lot more that we need to know about. How much does dyspraxia impact your daily life? On here, either not at all or all the time, I want you to ask yourself, what is the thing that impacts you? This actually takes us back right to the very beginning where I showed you those subtypes of dyspraxia. Yes, everyone in this room could have dyspraxia. Everyone in the room would experience it very differently. it is not a one-size-fits-all. Most people have difficulties in fatigue, getting tired. That's a very common outcome from burnout, essentially when you are overworking in certain areas. Executive functioning, processing, time management, social interactions, and motor coordination actually comes in the lowest, which is not surprising to me, because the biggest challenge with dyslexia, I would say, is memory opposed to reading. Just because something is, say, the poster child of the diagnosis doesn't mean that is the biggest difficulty. This little diagram, which is hot off the press, is a useful way of knowing where you need to get support. Understanding how your dyspraxia may impact your life can help you understand where you need to go to. This is aimed at people in a workplace. If it is predominantly motor skills, so coordination, you might want to go to an occupational therapist or physiotherapist. If you are having difficulties with connecting the dots, processing individual workplace skills, maybe using Microsoft Office, then you'd want to go to a different coach or mentor within your workplace. If you're someone who is struggling with communication, relationships, overall well-being, and day-to-day tasks, that's when you might want a psychologist or an ND coach. But your best port of call is HR or a line manager, which in theory should be able to help you with all of these things, or at least to signpost you. Heather says, fatigue and brain fog processing issues are a problem with me, and I never know whether it's my dyspraxia, my hypothyroidism, my menopause, or all three. Do you know what, Heather? I don't think you'll ever know what it is, because these things all are part of the same thing. And quite honestly, focusing on the exact reason is less helpful than focusing on what actually helps. You just need the right motivation, but you can ride a bike. We've also got, have you ever been told dyspraxia is not real? Have you ever heard this is not a real thing? And this is a classic example of ableism. This is when people who do not understand tell you what is real, what isn't real, what does impact you, and what doesn't impact you. Unfortunately, a lot of you have heard this. Not what we want to hear. You're being difficult on purpose. People think we can switch on and switch off. No. For something that you find really easy, we might find really difficult, and vice versa. This typically is the other person's problem for struggling with empathy, opposed to a you problem. That tends to be the case with a lot of these. You need to adapt to others. This is people expecting us to conform to a neurotypical world around us. Easier said than done. And hey, yeah, we can do it, but it is going to drain our social battery out. And this is not a sustainable approach. Is there a link between sleep issues and dyspraxia? There definitely is with ADHD. With dyspraxia, I'll be honest with you, there are no obvious links that I'm aware of. But that being said, will it contribute to other areas? Yes. I would say, anecdotally, there is connections, but in terms of actual studies, I don't know any off the top of my head. Oh, and some last unhonourable mentions. Have you heard these before, or have you not heard of these before? You walk like a drunk person, always bumping into things. I've been called drunk loads of time. Oh, that's the worst thing, actually. I've genuinely had people in professional environments come up to me saying, "Are you drunk?" I wish, mate. I'm not, though. How do you even survive daily life? Try being more organised. Oh, why didn't you tell me so before? You should do more sports to improve your coordination. My friends have dyspraxia. They don't struggle like you. These are things that we hear day in, day out. They are tiring. I think what society needs to do is change their mindset. Rather than seeing a normal brain, seeing different brains and different approaches. My final tips is extra time and understanding goes a long way. Do not interrupt someone. Allow them to find the words they're looking for and say it in their own time. Ask people what support they would benefit from. And do not make assumptions. Just because someone may have dyspraxia doesn't mean that they might not want to do physical tasks or public speaking. If you are more strength-based than deficit-focused, you are going to improve overall self-esteem and you'll have a much better approach. If you do want to learn more, an interesting book is one by Victoria Biggs, and it's called Caged in Chaos. and it's a guide to breaking free of the stigma of dyspraxia. To be honest, there aren't that many books on dyspraxia. This list here is a good starting point / end point. There are others, but these are the best ones. If you do want help with dyspraxia in the workplace, as always, get in contact and we do help with grants. If you do want to watch this again or any other webinars, do check out our YouTube channel. The goal is 10,000 by the end of the year, and so far we're doing pretty good, so I'm confident we will. Here's our contact details should you have any follow-up questions and would like to get into contact with us. Job done. Great session, great energy. Thank you. Oh, lovely. All right, I'm going to go out and have a nice walk in the sunshine because it doesn't happen a lot here. And I hope you all get out and have some fresh air too. I know today has been a bit rage baiting, but again, I think it's useful to understand these things and then we can work to better solutions. Anyway, have a great rest of your week.